Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hey, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. My name is Greg Palmer. Happy to have you with us today. Joining me today, we have two guests. We have Roman Chwyl of FinTech Unicorn Business from Microsoft and Paul Walker joining me from Helix. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks, Greg.
So I'll give you each a little bit of time to just introduce yourselves. Please do keep it brief so we can save as much time for the rest of the conversation. We've got a lot to get through. But Paul, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and where you're coming from.
Yeah, Greg, appreciate the time today. So I've been working in financial services for almost 25 years now. Spent most of that time with banks and credit unions focused on digital transformation. I currently head up revenue and partnerships for Helix, which is Q2's banking as a services division. And what we're doing now is working mostly with fintechs and brands to deliver banking services. So debit cards, checking accounts, savings accounts, those type of things, to embed that within their apps. So Helix is the platform that powers these services, and we're doing that in a cloud-native core running on Microsoft Azure.
Excellent. Roman, how about you?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. So my name is Roman Chwyl. I lead the FinTech Unicorn market here for high-tech pursuits at Microsoft. And we're looking at the Microsoft market a little differently in the sense that, we're in the FinTech market. We're essentially looking at, banking, we're looking at capital markets, insurtech, and social tech. We'll talk a bit about that today. But I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, so we're really kind of here to talk about the partnership that you all have put together, which is really interesting. I think let's start at just a really high level about where this partnership came from and what kind of the high level goals are and how you all are aligned. Roman, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, so, Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And that's a mission we hold dear and near to our hearts. And, as part of moving forward with helping financial fairness and equality in the markets, Helix has been an amazing partner. They share the similar values with us. They have a very similar mission. And I'll pass it on to Paul, but, this is just a great marriage in heaven for us to work together.
Great. Thanks, Roman. From day one, we felt like Microsoft Azure was the right technology partner to really build from a technology perspective. And after years of successful relationship and partnership, I had an opportunity to be introduced to Roman here recently, and really his focus on the fintech market. We just quickly realized our two organizations just had a lot of alignment. And, you just heard Microsoft's mission and vision. And, from our standpoint, Q2's broader mission is building strong and diverse communities by strengthening the financial institutions that serve them. And so I think when we started to really discuss, what does that mean in our respective worlds, and how do we leverage technology and innovation to go make social impact and change, I think it just opened up a lot of different interesting discussions between us. And I think we both agreed that embedded finance is really a huge opportunity for the underserved market. And currently, we're helping several brands together, like Acorns, Credit Karma, Gusto. These are all brands that have, real scale and are focused on these segments. And I think, one of my key goals today is just to make real impact and change. And how can Helix and Microsoft, share our partnership story and work with other companies out there looking to do the same.
Yeah, no, certainly if you look at where financial technology has the ability to really make an impact on a social scale, it's clear that we're just now scratching the surface of what's possible. One of the things that's really fun for me, I talk to a lot of people, obviously, across the space. And one of the things, whenever you talk about, what's one of the biggest failures, what's one of the things that's missing from what fintech has done so far, I think this looking at kind of the underserved markets, the unbanked, underbanked people is always one of the first topics that people bring up. At the same time, if you ask people what's the biggest opportunity in fintech, it's really almost the exact same answer, which is, of course, that there's a huge number of people who aren't customers yet, but can be customers. There's this massive opportunity for a win-win here. And I think, this is one of those things where I just love to see this kind of partnership take place. I guess my next question for you is, do you see this more as kind of a new opportunity or rectifying a problem that's been existing in the industry for too long? Or maybe it's both. Paul, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's a new opportunity per se. I just think there's been a lot more attention brought to this in recent years. And I just saw a report yesterday where over 61 or right at 61% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's up 6% from last year, which was already a staggering number. So it's not headed in the right direction, obviously. I think the other stats you're hearing is 60% of people can't afford an emergency of over $1,000. I think these are real problems. I mean, when you think about consumers out there that have a car repair, air conditioning go out, you lose your job. I mean, these really impact folks from being able to make these payments and do it responsibly. And so, as a general statement, I don't think this is really a market to go focus on. Unless you have the right reasons, like corporate responsibility. My sense is if you're thinking you're going to go after this market to go profit from, I think that's going to open up the predatory side of what we've seen for so many years. And so I think ultimately trying to target this market with the right solutions and tailoring products that make sense is going to be huge. And I think there is real change starting to happen. I mean, we're seeing new fintechs come out with things that have put pressure on traditional banking. And that could be getting your paycheck a couple days early. It could be the waiving of NSF fees. All these things really came from the fintech space, being creative around packaging, being creative around knowing their audience and actually caring about the audience in a way that wasn't trying to squeeze the best margins out of it possible. So definitely, I don't think it's a new problem. I think it's a problem that a lot of companies have shifted a focus. And again, the problem is far from solved, but I think there's some early indications that we've made more progress in the last few years than we have, I think, the previous 3 decades.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Roman, would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think there's 2 additional points I want to bring forward. It's also there's the builders and then there's the market, and so what I'm seeing in the market is I'm seeing people like and I said this to Paul a few times in the past. His grandmother, my grandmother, and grandparents would probably get dressed up, and get in a car and drive to their local bank in the community and very proudly park in front of that bank and open the door and walk inside and say hi to the teller and say, "Hi, Sally, how are you? And how are the kids?" And that ceremony was so special when you paid that mortgage. You felt so good about it. And that was in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Well, the world's changed today. And we're seeing the majority of the market, this underserved market, move towards more of the Walmarts, the Dollar Generals, the 7-Elevens. They're moving to that space. They do that one shop, they park their car, they buy their medical, they get their eyes taken care of, prescriptions, blood pressure, they do buy now, pay later. That becomes now that trusted area where they don't necessarily would go to a bank, or they have been denied in the past, or over generations have never had a good fondness for a bank, or know there are other products for them to have from the bank. And so that is kind of where the market's, in my opinion, is moving to that direction. It's moving to evolving to social fairness, social goodness, where people do one-stop shopping, and we're getting a bit more fair access and equal access to where they live and where they breathe every day. The second is the builders, and that's around the future builders of fintech companies. And they're not just building tech for tech. They're looking at and partnering with companies like Helix and Microsoft based on their social values. There are organizations who are saying, I agree with your mission. I agree we need to make a difference. So I'm the former Goldman Sachs executive. I'm the former Morgan Stanley executive. I'm the former whomever executive. I want to make the world a better place. And I'm going to pick companies and technologies that have a similar mission and value. Just like we have carbon credits and we have fair trade in coffee and in other areas, we're seeing that in technology as well. So we've got the builders and the market moving in the right direction, I think, for a better world and a better place.
Yeah, well, you hit on a couple of things there, which are really interesting. I think the first one is looking at kind of the relationship of trust, where you have consumers who are going to seek these services out from retailers or from other people because they have a trusting relationship with that retailer. They're willing to go and share all manner. As you pointed out, you can get prescriptions filled there. You can get your eyes checked, all these sort of personal details. And you have this sense of trust with this kind of company, which maybe you don't feel like you have with your local financial institution, or maybe in many cases, you've been kind of actively discouraged from going to that financial institution. We've had guests on this podcast certainly talking about people who get kind of vibed out of their financial institution because they're not the right color or the right gender or things like that. And there's certainly, when you introduce things like language barriers and income barriers, all of a sudden you've got a huge number of people who don't have the relationship of trust with their financial institution, which is obviously a really massive problem. And from an innovation standpoint, you can create tools that can help combat this, but creating that trusted relationship is obviously so much more difficult because that has to be done over time, and one misstep can really set you back dramatically. I want to talk a little bit about kind of this current situation that we're in. Paul, you talked about some of the alarming stats about where people are at and some of these things which we've heard about, how few people are able to handle a $1,000 expense. Why do you think this moment right now is the right time to really look at kind of tackling this change? Is it, a population that's ripe for it? The innovation that we have is able to meet the challenge, more data available now. I mean, it seems like there's sort of maybe a perfect storm coming of all these pieces kind of lining up in a way that we can make some meaningful headway here.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, I think you kind of really set the table well on that. I think if you almost look post-financial crisis and the emergence of fintech, right? There was an appetite for these new companies to come out and serve these underserved markets. And I think the business model was there. No one was worried about profitability, et cetera. And there was, a lot of, I think, meaningful change that was starting to happen. What I still think lacked considerably around that change was the fact that if you think, just for context, about 90 some odd percent of financial institutions today are basically running legacy technology for full service banking. And that's predating the internet, normally 40 years old. And a lot of the fintechs that have decided to go out and launch these different products, they're still having to partner with a bank that is sitting on legacy technology. And yeah, there's been some innovation with middlewares, but candidly, that still creates more cost burden. It's got tremendous limitations. There's really more areas for instability and like downtime, those type of things. And I think that's why we're pretty passionate about kind of a modern tech stack that can cost effectively bring up new programs very efficiently. And that's one of the benefits we have working with Microsoft, is how we've been able to structure this very cost effectively. But on top of that, really eliminate that cost burden that ultimately finds its way to the end consumer. I think that's a critical piece because, one, you've got to break the one size fits all mindset. And then two, how do you go tailor these products cost effectively to segments of the market that otherwise just, those products were never designed for them. And I think you really hit on a great point around, the Walmarts and the 7-Elevens, that trusted brand that, some of those segments have been built that trust over time. Well, how do we continue to build that trust? Well, you've got to go deliver products that, align with their value and their brand, not just a one size fits all that they got from their bank. And I think that's an important piece that we feel pretty passionate that the technology has evolved. There are players like Helix and others in the market that I think can start to move the needle for these larger companies that ultimately, that's how you impact the masses. And we're talking some pretty large numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's certainly a lot of things to chime in there. Roman, did you have one you wanted to add here before we move on to the next one?
I think, a lot of banks have taken their products and they've made them omni-channel. They put them web-based, mobile-based. They made them to put the skins on so people can access them multiple devices. That's fine. I think the embedded side is really important. So let's go a few steps further and look at the folks that cut the grass, the folks that take care of kids, the folks that clean houses, the folks that perhaps don't have necessarily bank accounts, but yet want to pay their AT&T bill, right? And how do they do that? I mean, they have to go to the store, waste a lot of time, and so the idea of digitizing that cash to money, from cash to credit to a digital entity, a card of some kind, working with those digital banks, if you will, and being able to enable and make their lives a lot easier, I think is a great step. Even think about children, young people, when they clean your house, when they do their dishes or their chores, it would be nice to give them a digital card they can move cash onto, and they can go and buy their games and play Xbox all day long. There's a lot of ways we can begin to innovate and help. We're looking at the timing of our parents and perhaps grandparents. Micro investing and financial fairness is a really new way to get people to a better space, to a better area. Micro lending and all these different areas are now becoming more and more streamlined, more mainstreamed and real. And that also is very important. And I want to really double click on the embedded side. We have to think how to embed the technology in the user experience, not just give people access to different technologies, if you will, or other devices. It really has to be relevant. So when you walk into that bank or you walk into the Walmart store, they know who you are. It's more embedded. It's a better experience. It's smarter. It's intuitive. It's impressive. And that's what's going to make the underserved more trusting with this technology, is that it's actually helping them, not creeping them, if you will. There's a way to look at that. And I think it's important to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if you look at it from my perspective, I think there's a couple of really big pieces that I can't believe still haven't been done. I still can't believe that a huge percentage of people have to pay a fee just to access their own paycheck, just to be able to get that money. It boggles my mind. How is check cashing still a thing in 2022? And, obviously bringing them into the credit sphere as well. Without access to credit, you really are incredibly limited in what you can accomplish. And, if we can just fix those two areas, think about how many people will have just a exponentially more profitable future, more financial wellness. So, I do see we're kind of coming up at the end of our time. I want to make sure we get to this next piece, because where this conversation frequently breaks down in my experience is, this all sounds good. I want to help. I don't know what to do next. I think sometimes it can be so daunting. And so I think the question is, what are you looking for out of the fintech community? How can people who are listening or watching this, who want to help, how can they come and become a part of it? And Roman, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think we've got three primary sort of high-level goals towards what is a unicorn. And I'm wearing the jacket here because I'm very proud to work with the unicorns. And it's really, these companies are putting the customer at the center of everything. They're really looking at it, mapping backwards from the customer and adding that benefit to the point of embedded, to the point of value add, to the point of impressiveness, not creeping, but benefit and helping. The second area is, these companies that we're working with are trailblazers. They're really changing the world. They're making the world a better place, in the sense that they're not really following someone's path and making it better. They're iterating, they're looking at themselves, and they're reinventing themselves constantly. They're not saying we've perfected everything. Nothing's perfect. We're going to always iterate and make things better and innovative and impress the market. And finally, if you can really help make the world a better place, help that wire transfer, that money movement from Seattle to Singapore a little bit more efficiently and cost effective. And I'm not talking about $1,000 movement. I'm talking about $50 movement, and I have to pay $40 SWIFT fees, because that's complete ripoff, if you will. There we can make the world a better place, make it fair, level the playing field. Everyone's entitled to fairness, transparency, and equality. I think it's really a great mission. And then the other area I want to double click on quickly, and I know I'm taking up a bit of time, is, I want people to look at Microsoft a little bit differently than they have in the past. We've got Teams, Bing, Surface, we've got Xbox, LinkedIn, GitHub, we've got Dynamics, we've got great partnerships, we've got great resellers and development communities. We've also got this massive diverse population of underserved and overserved. We've got millennials, students, gamers, small retail, large retailers. And we also have these people living in our products for 8 hours a day or more. So it's no longer just a big technology company. It's a pretty small country with that GDP of digital influence. So the idea is, think creatively how to plug into the Microsoft ecosystem. Think how to change gamers' lives, how to change LinkedIn lives through fintech innovation. I think we'll get a lot further in the world.
There's not much I can add to that, Roman. At the end of the day, I think, we understand our role as a technology enablement company, and we also feel like we know how to help bring a lot of these pieces together. Again, it's bringing that sponsor bank relationship. It's bringing the technology. It's understanding the roles and responsibilities of delivering a product like this and making it easy for someone that wants to make it very turnkey, or someone that wants to bring a lot of this in-house and have a lot of control over it. We can definitely work with companies of all desires. And I think for us in particular, we're just thrilled to be partners with Microsoft and work with them in their ecosystem of companies that are also trying to solve these same problems. Because I think in that world, Microsoft being a trusted advisor with the reach and scale they have, and us being able to demonstrate the success that we have with several leading brands, it's, I guess more so than anything, for us, it's call to action. And I'd love to be able to, take any inbound calls. And I know Roman would be very willing to do the same and help really try to give as much guidance as possible. Whether we're the right provider or not, time will tell. But I think we feel very good about what we're doing together, and love to have those conversations.
And together we're stronger. And if we can focus on the next 100 million, it's a good mission to work together. We invite others to join us in that mission. Let's make the world a better place.
Yeah, well, as I said at the start, I mean, it's great to see this partnership come to fruition, and what you're able to accomplish is really impressive. And I think it just kind of underscores that we're at a position right now where real change, significant change, is probably more possible now than it ever has been in any of our fintech lives. So, I think for anybody out there listening who's got a potentially game-changing idea, now is the time to pull it off. And you've got two potential really strong partners here who can help take you to that next level. There's a lot of problems that need to be solved. There's a lot of technology out there that can be pointed at those problems. And I think this is a really exciting time for people who've been following this space. And hopefully we see some really significant change in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So again, I've been talking with Roman Chwyl and Paul Walker, a really fascinating conversation. There's so much more that we could have dived into today. We unfortunately don't have time for. I would encourage anybody to follow up. We'll have some information in the description on this episode where you can reach out to them and get some more information on what they're working on. In the meantime, thank you both so much for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
That's great. Appreciate it.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.